Hello and welcome to CLEA'S World. I am Clea, and today I would like to share with you more the information I've received from the 25th dimension during my last BQH hypnosis session. I'll be reading from a transcript of the session, and when I refer to Lorrayne, I'm speaking of my practitioner who's asking me questions I prepared in advance of the session. And when I refer to me, I'm referring to myself under hypnosis, which means that the answers are coming from the 25th dimension. Before I jump in, I want to thank you as always for liking and commenting on this video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already done so. It really makes a huge difference for me, and it just makes me happy all around to see you stop by and say hi or whatever it is, especially if you're sharing, dreams and stuff like that. I always, as you know, always get ideas for questions from my interactions with you, and sometimes you have outright questions for me, which is also great. So I'm excited about all of that. All right, Lorrayne, you said we came up with the idea of resets and then the dark ran with them. And we decided not to use them anymore because otherwise, open quote, we reset on Monday, they reset on Tuesday, we reset on Wednesday, and so forth. What's the point? Close quote. The point is that we let them do whatever they wanted, even though we knew it was already dark here. And we instead decided to take down an entire planet in an almost passive-aggressive way, like saying, oh yeah, fine then, we will all suffer. Why couldn't we just reset every other day until we all realized that if we wanted to stay here and enjoy the game, we had to find a truce, a solution acceptable to all parties, especially since you said the dark never wanted this polarity to be broken either. The team of the light seems very passive. This is not my personality at all. And I know a lot of people on the team of the light who are very feisty. Has this changed over time? Or we are this way now because of the circumstances? How come we act as so helpless? And if you've seen my previous video, you've seen that I had a somewhat of a related question, and the 25th was like, yeah, we understand where she's coming from, but here's the lowdown. I was not in the best of moods. I was upset that we are taking this down, just as simple as that. So I'm like, why couldn't we fight? Why couldn't we do something? So here's the answer from the 25th. Yeah, so again, we mentioned that Clea, of course, has come a long way in terms of she's done a lot of mourning for leaving this game behind, etc., etc. And we know a lot of you have done that at conscious level as well. Of course, all of us are doing this behind the scenes, which is one of the reasons why we'll have such a hard time on New Earth, because not only we will, of course, be exposed to everything that's happened here, but we will also miss planet Earth so much. Despite everything, we will miss it. It will be very emotional because we will have our human emotions. And while we'll have more clarity, we'll still have to contend with emotions, just like we do here. And so when we say Clea has come a long way, of course, doesn't mean that she's over it. In fact, none of us are over it. And all of us will have to deal with this when we get to New Earth. Just like, and it's not just us going to New Earth, we said this before, including the people that are going with the aliens. They will not take well to the dissolution of the planet when they see it dissolve. So this is very unfortunate all around, obviously, that we have to do this. Now, again, this question very much betrays the fact that Clea is still very emotional, as we all really are, whether it's conscious or unconscious, about the fact that this is over. And again, it's part of the integration. So we're glad that questions such as these come up, because if it helps do the work, to start doing the work, or to continue really, we've started a while ago doing this work of integration and recalibration, then these questions are very welcome. So we want to expand on what we said previously. So the question here is, again, why is the team of the light so passive? I am feisty instead. And is this because of the vibration that's been accumulated? So we will say personality, what we consider a personality on this planet, is very much a product of your alignment, a product of a manifestation of your decision of where to go. So you might consider yourself feisty as a person of the light, but you might have seen a person who's feisty go to a 3D chamber. You might see a person who's feisty who's on a team of the dark. So in this case, you happen to be feisty. For you to have the personality, the stamina, the motivation to align with New Earth, you kind of have to have a certain type of personality, okay? But it's not that you have that personality at the higher self level. It's just something you align with. In fact, personality is just something that, we've discussed those before, comes with the body that you choose. Personality is a part of the MPC. It's something really, imagine, it's a tool that we use, okay, to achieve our goals, to align ourselves with the experiences we want to have in this life. So if you wanted to have, for example, an experience where you were abused your whole life, you will not have a certain type of personality because it wouldn't allow you to experience that. So this is what we mean when we say aligning with the choices you made about the experiences you have. Now, we already know the experience of abuse is something that we have unfortunately had to deal with here because this is not something that is acceptable. Really, one of the reasons we're taking this planet down. But we wanted to bring up an example that you could relate to in 3D terms. So the personality, CLEA is using this as saying, well, if I'm like this, and I know many on the team of the light are like this, how could this even happen? How could they, and CLEA is thinking, how could they 300 years ago, as if it was a they, somebody else, how could they let this happen? And they were laughing here. I'm so happy to be the butt of a joke for the 25th. I don't mind. I'm glad I never mind asking these questions, even when I know I'm writing down a question when I'm feeling, off or, emotional, whatever it is, because I always learn something from the answer. And I know that if I'm going through these feelings and these emotions, I know I'm not the only one. So I hope this brings value. I don't mind that the 25th uses me as an example of like how far off I am in my thinking. That's okay. I'm human. All right. We have let this happen. There is no past. We are doing this. We basically, it's what we were explaining about the fact that at the higher self level, we just don't have the emotions or the personality, certainly, that we exhibit here. We're all very calm, if you want to think of it that way, very matter of fact in that sense, which in this case, we would translate it as we look at something, we analyze it. Again, it's almost like you're dealing with games. You're deciding, how do I want to change the rules? What do I want to do here? What do I want to do there? There's no attachment. You just use the word, Lorraine, the word you said. I'm not attached to this game at the end of the day. Exactly. At the higher self level, there is no attachment. So it's not that we were passive because there was some lack on our part at the higher self level. And it's not that now we are strong because we are doing this. At the higher self level, we are the same. There is no improvement or decrease in our status because we are not doing certain things at 3D level or within the matrix. And so we understand where this question comes from. This is really, truly a 3D way of thinking about it. There is none of that at the higher self level. We, of course, know more things that we did 300 years ago. So that's absolutely true that we've learned things. And again, this wasn't done so we could learn things, but we have learned things. Just because the more experiences we have, the more we're experienced, as simple as that. And of course, we remember our experiences. But at the same time, we are no better. Just because we have this personality, we are no better now. The personality is not part of the higher self. So now, again, it's part of the alignment. And why is this important? Because we even brought this up in the last session when speaking of the 12 embodied incarnations of each light worker. We said the personality must be pretty similar because at the end of the day, the 12 are part of the one. We're going to become one, and they're going to bring all these experiences to bear when we go to New Earth as one. We wouldn't have necessarily disparate personalities for the simple reason it would not have allowed each one of the 12 to align with New Earth. So again, personality is just comes with the NPC, and it's just what your higher self picks in order to set up the experiences that it wants to experience in a particular embodied incarnation. So we get the motive behind the question, but again, it doesn't work that way. Lorraine, thank you. I think if you divided up the teams, so the team of the light and the team of the dark, it's just that the team of the dark had no limits. They didn't place any limits on themselves. They basically said, we can do all this stuff. The team of the light looked at it and thought, well, I can't cross that line. So I'm limited in my potentiality for fun in this game, where the dark didn't care. Me, laughing. They were laughing here. The team of the dark, from the very beginning, we said that this happened at a higher dimensional level, especially the 5th and 7th dimensional levels. They came in with a very clear motivation that, and this was a misunderstanding on all of our parts, this is what it stemmed from, where they believed they were doing something very good for the planet. Keep in mind, they're not trying to be bad at the higher self level. We always judge them. They've done a lot of things for us and for this planet. And what they've done is that the misunderstanding they came up with, but again, we went along with it, was that they had to keep the low vibration, because since we use lower vibrations to build this planet, because again, it's frequency. So it's a matter of using certain vibrational frequencies to create matter. They thought, we gotta keep this in place, and this is the way to do it. We never went in, because we also were under the same misunderstanding. We never went in and said, oh, this is too low, or no, you don't need this. We just didn't have this experience. We didn't know. We did not realize. And so in many ways, they have protected the planet. They've protected the game. They've protected this reality, if you want to think of it from a higher self, playing within the matrix perspective. From 3D, of course, we've seen what that translates into, and it's been very extremely unpleasant things. But so, yeah, I mean, were we horrible? We said limit here or limit there. We really, a lot of the times, we really thought they were doing the right thing. So why would we even stop certain things? When we said, we might have said, okay, well, we weren't doing that before. Why do we have to do it now? But we already said, we have to support everything if we're going to live with it. And we said, for example, when we spoke about torturing animals, why do we have to do that? And then we said, okay, but well, it does the job. So now we look at it and we say, but of course, but the truth is, it wasn't so obvious. That's why we talk about the misunderstanding. And I made a comment here, which came to mind as I was transcribing this, is that we are now judging things in hindsight. So of course, hindsight is always 20/20. But at the same time, I shake my head at the fact that we didn't think that certain things were so low. they were too much. And not only, but I also think I see it from the other perspective, which is, it's almost like you're looking at a child. So I have my daughter, for example, and she does things where I'm shaking my head. I'm like, why would you think that was a good idea? How did you not know the consequences of this? But of course she doesn't. She's never had to face the consequences for a particular action. She has no idea what could happen. So it's real. What ignorance is real. And it's not that she's a bad person. My daughter is a bad person because she's 6 and she doesn't know what I know as a much older adult. And so this helps me put some of the stuff in perspective and not be so upset about all of this. However, I know I'll have to do a lot of work, because just reading these words about torturing animals, I'm already like all emotional. So it's fine. We were born for this, to do this work. We've aligned with this. We have aligned with this. So I have no doubt it will be up for the task. So it's what it is. We'll have to deal with it. Lorrayne, I have no animosity towards my fellow game players on the side of the dark. I recognize that we're all one, and I go from there. So next question. And this is a question that popped up in the community, in this community, that I thought I wanted to know what was going on. And I found it very interesting. So I do want to share with you. Nothing bad happened, but we see how we interact with each other. We know that people have essences in our community. And so it's interesting to see what we're doing, because very often these behaviors that we have, because again, we're all very emotional, very much betray what we're working on behind the scenes. And so, of course, it always makes me curious when I see things that are a little bit unusual. So here we go. This was the question. Why is it that women in the Telegram group seem grounded, quote unquote grounded, while some of the men are breaking down and seem more committed to the matrix and intel out there? Is this to show us something? And it doesn't mean that all the men in the Telegram group are doing this. Obviously, this question is very much generalizing, but we did have a couple of instances with someone who was having a really rough time receiving information and being very, finding comfort in intel that the 25th has already told us it's not really, none of that is going to happen. And again, there is no judgment. We've all been there. I've been following intel when this whole thing started with the pandemic. I've been following intels religiously for 2 years. So, that's how I got through that and I came to this. So it's all good. But I was curious to see, again, that the main key to this question is this to show us something? Okay, are we supposed to learn something? As in, is this an experience we're having? Obviously, we don't have to learn anything. Me. It is not to show us something, as in, again, what this question, the way it's phrased, what it presupposes is that it's meant for us to learn something. We have this perspective on this planet. This is very much a perspective used in New Age spirituality, for example, where we are being presented with some low vibe or what we consider to be low vibe behaviors or less than ideal behaviors, we should say, so we can learn something, so we can see something. So no, that's not why this is happening. We don't have to learn anything. We don't have to be shown anything. The reason we are witnessing certain things is because each one of us is having a very hard time coping what's happening at an emotional level. And we all react differently at a conscious level, as simple as that. Behind the scenes, all our higher selves are struggling. We are all struggling. And that's why a lot of resistance comes up, because we are dealing with a lot. We're just dealing with a lot. Not only this is huge already historically, if you want to say historically within the matrix, but it's not easy to be here right now. And it's not easy to be here, not only because of what we're going through, but until very recently, it was the lowest vibration we've probably ever experienced. In fact, we'll tell you, the lowest level of vibration we've ever experienced within the matrix. This is not easy to cope with at an emotional level, even though you might not look at it and realize it. But we already know, we feel everything. So it's not, so even now we're rebalancing, but what does rebalancing mean? It means that we've had to go through all of this and clear a lot of it, etc., 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 etc. We've spoken at length about all of this. So it's not that these people are behaving wrong, because that's really what the question presupposes, which is, why are they doing this? Why do they need to do this? There's no right and wrong way of dealing with this. The fact that we are here is a big deal. It's very challenging emotionally, extremely challenging emotionally. We gave you just a taste of it in the last session when we were talking about some of the stuff we really are dealing with behind the scenes. And the fact that we are keeping a lot of that going because it is that challenging emotionally. You cannot even imagine emotionally how challenging it is. You will have a very clear view of it once you get to New Earth. But again, we've even said most of the human population, they don't want to go to New Earth for that reason, because of how challenging it is here. They didn't even want to be here through the end to see the takedown because of what it entails. So are they doing anything outside of the lines considering what we're dealing with? No, absolutely not. Everybody's way of dealing with this is how everyone wants to deal with this, considering the enormity of what we're experiencing. However, we will comment in terms of what you said, the other part of the question, which was, it seems like the women are more grounded. It has nothing to do with, well, we would like to explain this properly. It is not that because you're a woman, you somehow know how to handle this better, which again, this has never happened before. However, there is a factor there, which is we on this planet are socialized differently and we have wanted different experiences. And of course, experience as a woman is very different from having experience as a man at this time. And therefore, of course, that has some bearing on how we express certain things, what we believe at a conscious level is acceptable or not acceptable to do. So of course that has some bearing. So it would make sense that we would handle emotions perhaps a little bit differently, whether, be more used to them, perhaps treat them a certain way, or reject them and therefore act in a different way. Of course, also keep in mind different people are dealing with different things in their own lives. So of course that will affect how you react to certain things, but it's not because we are any different. We are all one, we're all the same. So everybody's clear in the way they have to. So yes, there is some socialization, again, different experience we wanted to have here in terms of, am I coming in as a woman? Am I coming in as a man? And then from there, whatever comes after that. But that's not really obviously the main reason, because there are women that might act exactly like some of the men have acted in the group, and there are men who are not acting like some of the men that Claire was thinking of when she wrote this question. So no, obviously that's a generalization. And I'm aware of that, of course. I just thought it was interesting. I really wanted to ask about the difference. Was there a difference in how maybe women and men are taking this? And I thought the answer was worthwhile sharing with you. Lorrayne, thank you. There does seem to be a higher percentage of schizophrenic personalities in the males that have joined the 25th group. But continue with Claire's question. Are they all going to New Earth? The men sometimes take stuff out on us. And when you try to help them refocus on what you've suggested, they're resented, even though they are in the group about the 25th. For example, when Claire mentioned that we must focus on our internal reality because we're finally learning that we are the creators, someone even said this is binary thinking. And this was very funny when the 25th said, all right, me, and they were laughing. Yeah, truthfully, the person is correct. Claire is explaining things from a 3D perspective, saying, let's go inside. which of course is correct. We've spoken about this many times. And really, when he says binary thinking, he's also correct, because what is he saying? It's what we always say. There is no outside of reality, really. So there is no separation. So they're going about this, and they're both correct, really, in that sense. So that's perfectly fine. But we wanted to, so you asked us if everybody's going to New Earth in the group at this point. No. There have been new people coming in, and not everybody's going to New Earth. However, we've already said this information being distributed from the 25th is for everyone. So that's perfectly fine. You also mentioned the fact that there seems to be some schizophrenia issues among the men, whereas we are not seeing that among the women. And again, keep in mind that based on the socialization we've had on this planet, so is the higher self planning your incarnation, your experience in this particular embodied incarnation, you would take into account certain things, including the NPC that you take over. And this might be the reason. This might be the way, well, we're giving you clues here. They were laughing. Is that this is the way that these people would have allowed their connection to the 25th to happen, or become consciously aware of the 25th, where they allow all kinds of things in. And all of a sudden, it's okay for them to let acknowledge, conscious knowledge of the 25th as well. Bottom line is, everything you have the same. You say everything happens for a reason. We would say the higher self is in charge of everything. So schizophrenia almost seems like, oh, but they're behaving a certain way. We're not saying that's what you intended, but it almost sounds like, oh, they were acting a certain way because they have schizophrenia. Not only, but the women don't have it. So what is going on? Truthfully, is what we're just explaining, which is everybody's dealing with these events as well as they can. For some, it feels the better way to handle these things is to allow everything to just percolate without censoring anything. Because really, what's the difference between a person who has schizophrenia and somebody who doesn't? We're all aware of everything. It's just the person who doesn't, for example, like in the case of you and Clea, you filter at a conscious level. You filter everything out and you say, oh, but I know what's real. But really, nothing is real. And they were laughing here. And I have to say, this is pretty funny because it's so true. I mean, we label people here, and we assume that because somebody meets the standard of a certain label, then we know who we're dealing with. We do, oh my goodness, the games we play. So really, when you think about it, what is the difference between you and the other person? Is that you decide this is what reality looks like, and therefore this is okay. And everything else outside of it, we don't mean to say okay as in you're judging them. We know you are not. But in general, this is how society thinks of certain things. This is okay. This is considered normal. And everything outside of that, it means that the person has an issue. And we'll have a label and a name for the issue. Really, we're all aware of everything. The only difference is that these people are okay letting certain things percolate at a conscious level and not refraining themselves from voicing them or from considering them on par with everything else. And truly, when you think about it, are they crazy? Are they making this up? They were laughing. We know it's all real. It's all happening. We're aware of all kinds of things. So really, when you truly think about it, I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. And of course, we know there's nothing wrong with them whatsoever at the higher self level. But even from a 3D perspective, when you break it down, these people are not really crazy, are they? Now, by society standards, of course, they are. This is what we think of them. We think they're crazy. But again, it's because of the rules that we apply to ourselves that they don't apply to themselves. It's a different way in how we play the game. So they come in. Now, some people that have these issues are in the group. Of course, they deal with things differently from how you and Claire would deal with things. But it's not because it's not a wrong way of dealing with things. And they still got to this point because in their case, they were allowing everything in. So they got to this point. But now, because they allow everything in, they can also say, yeah, the 25th is just as real as, and we've had an example of this, the 25th is just as real as the fact that we're going to have disclosure and we're going to have aliens and we are ascending. And we have all these things because everything is equal. We're looking at all the different possibilities at the same time. So really, this is quite challenging to do when you think of it at a 3D level. And these people, again, what's fueling all of this is the emotions behind what's happening right now, which we're all dealing with the same thing. Some of us have just a different way, what we consider a more restricted or more defined way of dealing with certain things. I have to tell you, I did love this answer, and I learned a lot from it. And so I hope you enjoyed it as well, because we are all very judgmental here. It's just the way it is. And even when we mean well, we don't really realize the meaning behind what we're actually saying or what we're basing ourselves on. So I'm glad this question popped up. Lorrayne, thank you. It is interesting that you said that all ideas have equal weight. I know from my 3D experience, some concepts have a higher weight, in my opinion, from my perspective as a 3D individual than others. But I find that interesting about the equal weighted perception with that label. Thank you. Me. But of course, and you're absolutely right in everything you said, but of course you would think some ideas have more weight, because what are ideas? Ideas are something that we leverage, that we create. Ideas are not real. Nothing is real. But you will be more attracted to ideas that will bring you along the path of what you decided your experience to be. So of course, certain ideas have more weight for you because that's almost your landing path, you know, to use airline terminology. Whereas somebody else's who's going in a different direction would not give more weight to the ideas that you might find more valuable because that's not where they're going. So of course it makes sense, but from a 3D perspective, it absolutely makes sense. Again, it's something you are leveraging to shape your experience here. And they're doing the same. They just have no filters or different filters from yours because they obviously have filters too. They of course have filters just as well. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video.